Have you ever prayed for something for so long, but it's never come to fruition? Have you ever prayed for change, but the change never came? Have you ever asked for a little bit of help, but the help never came? Well, a very, very warm welcome to you guys. Hi, it's Cassim, and I want to welcome you back again to Notes on the Topic of. And I want to talk to you today on this topic of stop praying, start moving. I want to begin by thanking you very much for joining us this afternoon. I want to thank you very, very, very much for spending the next kind of 45 minutes to an hour with me as I share with you some ideas, some strategies, some notes that I have made on this topic. And I'm really hoping that it can add some value to the quality of your life, that in some way it can help you to step into your greatness so that you can become a stronger, wiser, higher expression of who you're capable of becoming, so that you can step in that direction of getting some of the things that you want out of your life, whether that be in your relationship, whether that be in your health, whether that be with your emotional vitality, your spiritual vitality, or whether that be in terms of business, in terms of your value in the marketplace. So I truly want to thank you so much for spending the time with me. As I mentioned earlier on, I want to talk to you on this subject of stop praying and start moving. But before I get into that, I want to ask you to like and subscribe to our channel Cassimotive on YouTube if you like some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. Don't forget to like and click on the notification button, I think it's called. So not only subscribe, but click on the notification button, because that's where we put most of our content. And I want to share as much of the things that I have learned in my life so that you can become your highest, fullest expression of who you're capable of becoming. So as I said, I want to talk to you on this subject: stop praying, start moving. And I've made several notes on the subject that I want to share with you. But I want to begin off with a couple of statements. You can make of the statements whatever you will, but I want to combine two statements. And the first statement that I want to share with you is this: there has to come a point in all our lives that we accept that our prayers are not being answered. And I want to combine that with the fact that before you can actually receive a miracle, you have to be open to the idea that it might not happen. I want to repeat those statements again, because those statements, I want them to set as a foundation for what I want to talk about today, which is that firstly, there has to come a point in all our lives that we accept that our prayers are not being answered, that the Savior, that a miracle is not going to happen in our lives. Before we can receive a miracle, we have to be open to the idea that it might not happen. You know, we live in this world where we have been brought up in a world where we've been told, if you work really hard, if you are a good person, if you put your effort into stuff, if you dedicate yourself to a certain company, if you dedicate yourself into a relationship, that it will work out. And I would 100% say as a general rule, indeed, if you put effort into something, if you work hard, if you're a good person, if you do the right things, it may take you 10, 15, 20 years, it may take you 2 months, but ultimately you will achieve whatever it is that you want. And we've been brought up in this world to believe that. But there is another part of life which very few of us are really acquainted with, and as a result, many of us are malnourished and underperforming in this particular area, which is that sometimes things don't work out. Your prayers are not answered. You don't get what you want. And I think that it is so important, and is actually part of wisdom and part of maturing from childhood to adulthood, understanding that sometimes you do lose, right? We know that some people, they do the best that they can. They're a loyal husband, they're a loyal wife, they fight and stick with their partner, they do everything that they're supposed to, and yet their partner cheats on them, and they, even in spite of the cheating, they try to make things work, but ultimately that cheat or that betrayal of trust ultimately ends up at a point where indeed they do get divorced. We know that you can be the most perfect person in life, that you can live a perfectly good life, you can work really hard, you can be a good person, you can help other people, but at some point it is possible for you to get cancer, and you may even battle the cancer and fight through, but eventually you can lose your battle to cancer. All of us know that you can live in this world where you go and work for a company, you dedicate yourself to that company, you work really hard, you put years and years and years into this company, you work on the weekends, you come in on days that you're not supposed to, you answer any emails on your time off, and even though you've dedicated yourself and you've been trained to be the next CEO, to be the next boss, to take over the company, that life happens, and we can, especially today, the organization can get to a point where it goes into bankruptcy, a new organization buys it, and they want to bring in their own leadership. And so all of that hard work, all of the effort that you've put in, all of your dedication ends up not coming to fruition. And I think that it is so important and so imperative that most of us understand this. Because I think that so many of us go through life wanting abundance, wanting miracles, wanting to win at life, wanting to actually create and build an incredible and spectacular life for ourselves, but many of us don't accept that there is a possibility that we can lose, that even though we can put everything, our all, our effort, our energy, everything into something, that it is possible for that very thing not to work out. And I say this because, so many of us don't understand that whilst we may live in this world where we are going after stuff, one of the things that many of us don't calculate into our decision-making process and our planning is that many of us don't understand that the moment you move kind of from childhood to adulthood, the rules change. People don't play fair. People don't follow the rules. Some people have different capacities, right? And actually, that's one of the things that I've had to personally learn in my own life. That whilst all of us are equal as human beings, we don't all have the same capacity. For example, you could give me the best possible coaches out there. I could have the best regime. I could have the best resources at my disposal, and I could train for the next 5 years. But I'm telling you, if me and Usain Bolt go into a race, I'm never going to beat Usain Bolt. Now, that doesn't mean that Usain Bolt is a better human being than me. But what it does mean is that he has a different capacity. And many of us don't understand that all of us have different capacities. Many of us don't understand that we live in this world where there are people who want the very same things that we want, right? There are people who want to win as well. There are people who want to accumulate wealth. There are people who want to reach the highest echelons of life. There are people who want a good life. And as a result of that, we are in this world where we're in this constant conflict. And so many of us don't get that part of winning, that part of getting our prayers answered, that part of getting what we want in life is about understanding that there is a possibility that we can fail. And I have found that so many of us in life, we are lured into this trap where instead of really going after life, instead of us doing what is required to become whoever we need to become so that we can get what we want, many of us end up kind of tiptoeing our way through life. I love something that Jim Carrey once said. Jim Carrey once said that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on what you love. And I think that so many of us think that if I play it safe, if I take the more traveled road, if I just build walls around myself, my heart, around my spirituality, around my openness, if I just always act on the defensive, then I will never get hurt. Then I will never fail. Then I have a better chance of winning. But I have found from my experience that this isn't really true. right? Because when you spend your whole life defending yourself, when you spend your whole life tiptoeing your way through life and doing the very bare minimum and doing whatever is safe, it leaves no room for improvisation. It leaves no room for creativity. It leaves no room for you to step outside of the structures and the systems and the boundaries and the rules, right? And the thing that I have found about life is that in order to live an abundant life, you have to get to the point where you break some rules, where you do things that are different. I wrote down recently that so many of us fail at life, not because we're not talented, not because we can't achieve success, not because we can't become winners, but because part of the reason why we don't achieve the success that we're capable of becoming and live up to our potential is because we keep using standard strategies, attitudes, and philosophies, as well as attitudes and strategies in order to live, which are standard in order to live a remarkable life. I found that in life, very rarely do we actually ever get what we want, right? I think we live in this world where many of us have been lured into believing that, do you know what? If you work really hard or if you really want something, then you will get it, right? If you put your effort into something, if you put your all into something and you need it, then as a result, your prayers will be answered. But I would like to challenge you for a minute to really challenge that belief system. Because I have found that just because you need something and want something, it doesn't mean that you deserve it. And I think we live in this world where many of us confuse need by deserving. And my question to you is, you talk about the fact that you want a great relationship. You talk about the fact that you want promotions and you want competence and you want wealth and you want freedom in your life. My question to you is, do you deserve it? Do you deserve to achieve the things that you're talking about? Now, let me take this a step further, because many of us will be lured into the trap of saying, well, Cassim, I do deserve it. I do deserve a promotion. But let me share something with you which I recently learned. So I was studying negotiation, and I was looking at how can somebody increase their income and their salary. And one of the ways in which you can increase your salary or you can increase the income that you earn is to negotiate with your employer. And so I was studying a man who has a very famous speech on which he did at Harvard University, and he shares some of the tips for achieving a higher salary. And one of the things that he talks about is that one of the things is that you need to deserve the salary that you're going to your employer to ask for. But he says that there is two parts to that deserving of the salary. One part is you need to have done your part, but the second part of it is that your employer needs to believe that you also deserve what you're getting. And I think that so many of us can be lured into saying, well, Cassim, I do deserve it. I have worked hard. I have put in effort into our relationship, and as a result, it should have worked out. But my question to you is that does the other person believe that your work that you've put in is deserving of what you're seeking? You know, I think about so many people who are in relationships and are in conflict with each other, and they talk about the fact that it's his fault or it's her fault, or I have put all my all into this relationship. And then when you ask the other person about what contribution they've made and how and the degree that they believe that their partner has made a contribution, many people will say, well, my partner hasn't made a contribution. Well, my partner hasn't put in effort. And you think, how can two people be in the same relationship, one of them thinks that they're putting in 80%, but then when you ask their partner believes that they're putting in 20%. Because it's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of seeing things from all the different angles. And what I would share with you is that you want to begin to heighten your level of wisdom and your level of perception, in that not only do you see how much you're deserving of something based on your perspective, but you also see how much you're deserving of something from other people's perspective. You may think that you're a great boyfriend or you're a great girlfriend, or you believe that you're a great human being, but from whose perspective are you talking about? Are you talking about that from the perspective of yourself, or are you talking about that from the perspective of people who don't know you, of your enemies? Because your enemies, whether you believe it or not, or whether you think that they're right or wrong, they may not believe that you are as nice as what you claim. They may not believe that you deserve some of the things that you claim that you deserve as much as you do. And it's important to look at all of those. You know, I've found that some of the greatest lessons that I have learned from my life have been from people who hate me. Because people who hate me can see things about me that I haven't been able to identify. And as a result, if I give myself some white space and open myself up to all the possibilities of life, I may begin to realize, okay, maybe I am a bit annoying. Okay, maybe I am a bit strong on my opinions. Okay, maybe I didn't work as hard as I thought I had worked. And I challenge you to really think about that for yourself. You know, it's interesting that it is one thing to pray for a savior, but most of us actually put the responsibility on them. And I ask you to consider this, because I have found that the average person will put more than 50% of the responsibility on how their life turns out, not on themselves, but on other people. I wrote down, as I was preparing for this, that things change when you put more than 50% of the responsibility on you. Right? I wrote down, as I was preparing for this as well, that getting your shit together requires a level of honesty you cannot possibly imagine. There is nothing easy about realizing that you're the one who's been holding you back this entire time. And part of the reason why I wrote that down is that so many of us, we pray to achieve success. We hope that things are going to get better. We close our eyes and say, I am a good person and it will work out for me. And there is a place for that. There is a place for faith, for belief, for confidence. Absolutely. But also, there has to be a place where we look at, are we putting most of the responsibility as to how things work out in our life on things that are outside of ourselves, on other people, on God? I want to share with you that I have found that God will always uphold his end of the bargain. The universe will always uphold its end of the bargain. You do not need to, if you take a seed and you plant it in the ground, you water it and you give it sunlight and you put it in good soil, you do not need to worry about that tree growing. The tree will grow. But I think what many of us fail to recognize in ourselves is that many times, most of us are putting most of the responsibility on God. Most of us are putting most of the responsibility on the universe. Most of us are putting most of the responsibility on other people, on circumstances, on factors which are outside of our control. Many of us don't recognize that, oh, okay, I want to be happy and I want to build an incredible life, but in order for me to be happy and in order for me to achieve that level of fulfillment which I'm seeking in my life, I am going to have to, all of the things, more than 50%, more than 60% of that journey of lining things up in order to achieve that fulfillment or that happiness is going to have to be a contribution of all of these things which are all outside of my control. I can't control the government, I can't control the weather, I can't control other people, I can't control God, I cannot control the economy. And so many of us, in order for us to win at life, in order for us to achieve success, in order for us to become champions, in order for us to live an abundant life, all of the things that would allow us to be able to do that are all outside of our control. And one of the things that I think is really important is that we've got to take back control of our lives. We've got to bring most of the responsibility on us. And I say this because, as I said, it takes a level of honesty, it takes a level of humbleness to actually put the responsibility on you. Jim Rohn very famously said that the day that you move from childhood to adulthood is the day that you take full responsibility for your life. Most of us do not have more than 50% of the responsibility on us of how our life turns out. Most of us, the responsibility, most of it, lies with things outside of ourselves. I challenge you as we continue throughout 2021 to put most of the responsibility of how your life turns out on you. Let it be you, your spirituality, your philosophy, your attitude, your habits, your strategic thinking. Let those be the determining factor as to how your life turns out. You know, I have, in my life, I have decided and made a decision about 2 years ago that my goal in life was no longer to try to be right. My goal now is to seek the truth. And the reason why I changed, because, you know, for most of my life, I've been trying to be right. I've been trying to do everything right and do what is right and stand by what I believe is right. But I have found that as we grow, as we develop, as we achieve success, that our definitions of stuff is going to change. And the reason why is that part of what I have found is that I'm going to link this to something else. Let me go backwards. I have essentially found that many of us in life, we try to stick with things that no longer support where we're at in life. So many of us in life try to hang on to things that no longer serve us. Yes, when we were younger, we did believe that people who had a lot of money were bad people. Here's the thing, now that we've grown, now that we've developed, now that we've actually gone out there and met people and we've seen a different perspective of life, we now understand that actually there are some people out there in the universe, there are some people out there in the world who have worked hard, who are good with money and genuinely are generous with money and do go out there and they share their wealth and do go out there and use what their power and influence in order to improve the lives of their people within their community, of their family, of people within their society. There are people who are like that. And so I think it takes a level of humbleness and it takes a level of radical thinking, of honesty to really come to terms with, okay, I was wrong in the past, right? But now I can refine my thinking, I can refine my philosophy. I have found that so many of us in life, we are living with attitudes, with ideologies, with facts, with habits that no longer support where we want to go, who we want to become, what we want to achieve. And unless we do that, one of the problems is we are going to put most of the blame on God, and God is going to be upholding his end of the bargain, and the universe is going to be upholding its end of the bargain, except for we're not going to be able to move forward. We're not going to be able to progress because there is an error in us. There is an error in our judgment. There is an error in our philosophy, in our strategy. Let me put this metaphorically for you. It's like wanting to drive a car and pushing down on the accelerator by having the handbrake on. No matter how powerful that car is going nowhere if the handbrake is on. And it takes a level of honesty, a level of humbleness to be able to say, okay, fair enough, I have had the handbrake on, let me take the handbrake off, right? It takes a maturity. You see, most people can't accept that they were wrong. Most people can't accept that there was an error in some of the thinking that they have. I share with you that closing your eyes and praying for a miracle does not produce one. I have found that as a general rule, if you leave things, they don't get better. And the reason why I say this is because so many of us, we hang on to these attitudes and we hang on to these belief systems and we hang on to these ideologies and we hang on to all of these strategies and tactics. And we believe, well, if I continue doing them, if I continue long enough doing on this path, eventually it will fix itself. Eventually it will work out. It will work out. But I've actually found that when you leave things, rarely do they ever work out. Rarely do they ever improve. I'm telling you that if you leave your room and you don't ever tidy up your room and you go about your life, your room will not magically just improve itself. I can share with you that if you don't work on your creativity, on your openness, on your ability to communicate, on your ability to defend yourself, on your ability to build your life, on your ability to make decisions, all of these faculties do not improve by default. In fact, I can share with you that anything that is not growing is by default declining. If you take your car and you leave your car and you drive it to Heathrow Airport and you leave your car at Heathrow Airport undriven for the next 3 years, when you come back, that same car, which is maybe brand new that you purchased yesterday, is going to be rusty, the battery is not going to work, it's going to the engine is not going to start straight away. Why? Because anything that is not growing automatically by default begins to die. It begins to decline. I can share with you that you cannot mitigate the consequences of indecision. Many of us believe if I don't make a decision, if I just close my eyes and pretend that everything is okay and hope that God is going to fix things and hope that things are going to work out and hope that, do you know what? Somebody's going to come into my life who is going to improve my life. I can share with you that I have found that that lack of indecision almost always never works out in our benefit. Now, me saying that, I have to accept and I have to acknowledge that there are always an exception to every rule. There are some people who will make really bad decisions or refuse to make decisions, and things just magically will improve in their lives. But I have found that our lives change in one of two ways. Number one, something bad happens to us and forces us to change. Or the second thing is that we make a decision to change ourselves in order to get what we want. In fact, that perfectly leads me to the next statement that I wanted to share with you as part of my notes, which is that most people want the world to change to suit them. Winners change themselves in order to fit around the world. Let me repeat the statement. Most people want the world to change to suit them. Winners change themselves in order to fit around the world. I was having a conversation yesterday with my next door neighbor who has been trying to lose weight for the last, she's been trying to lose weight for many years, but she's made a concerted effort to try and lose weight over the last month or so. And she saw me running, and she saw me doing a lot of exercise, and she said to me, wow, I love your dedication and I love how determined and disciplined you are. And one of the things that I said to her is, it's wonderful that you want to lose weight. And she talked about the fact, she basically was giving me all these excuses and all these reasons as to why it is she's put on even more weight and she lost some and then she's gained some and she still hasn't reached her goal. And one of the things that I shared with her is, if you really wanted to achieve your goal, if you really wanted to get what you want, you would do whatever is necessary instead of doing what is easy. Because I have found that most of us do what is easy, not what is required. And then we say, well, God is not working out in my favor. Well, the world is against me. Well, people just don't help me out. Well, I'm unlucky. No, you're not unlucky. The problem is that you're not upholding your end of the bargain. You're going to the field and saying, well, I've been a good person. I deserve to have a crop, or I deserve to have some fruit on my trees. And yet you didn't go and work to get the fruit, to get the seeds. You didn't plant the trees. You didn't water them. There is an error in some of the things that you're making, in some of the decisions that you're making. And what I shared with my neighbor is that, look, if you really wanted to lose weight, here's what you would do. Because one of the excuses that she said to me was that, Cassim, I'm obsessed with just eat and it's really easy. And I can just order a really like donuts or basically what she said to me was that she has Just Eat with Greg's. And she said, you know, it's easy for me to order Greg's and the donuts there are really nice. And I said to her, if you really wanted to lose weight and you really wanted it that bad, you'd walk into Greg's, you would tell the people in Greg's your address and say to them, here's a picture of me and here's my address. If I make an order, please tell all your staff not to bring me these donuts. Do not deliver anything from your shop to my business. Now, she said, well, why would they do that? And I said to her, people want to help people who want to help themselves. In fact, I would share with you that most of us will help anybody who is already helping themselves, right? One of the big truths and one of the big realizations that I came to in my life was that and I will use an example to explain this. If you break down in your car and you're driving along, your car breaks down, and you sit in your car and you wait for somebody to come along and ask you if you need pushing, nobody's going to come along. But if you are sat in your car and you break down and you get out of your car and you start attempting to push your car, most people will stop and they will help you try to push your car. They will help you. They will ask you what the problem is that they can help you with. You see, most of us are not achieving what we want. We're not getting the miracle. We're not achieving the dreams that we have in our lives because in part we're not pushing. You see, most of the dreams that we have to take them 70% of the way before other people will help us, right? And my question to you is, are you prepared to look silly? Are you prepared to look like an idiot? Are you prepared to do whatever is necessary, whatever is required in order to reach your goal? Because this goes back to what I said earlier on, that most people put the majority of the responsibility on how their life turns out, not in factors that are in their control, but in factors that are outside of their control. Winners have the majority of things that are going to affect their ability to succeed within their control, within their domain of control. And I ask you to really ask yourself, you talk about the fact that you want to get married. You talk about the fact that you want to go traveling around the world. You talk about the fact that you want wealth. On your journey to getting there, are most of the steps that you're going to need to take in your control, or are they outside of your control? And if there are outside of your control, could you take a different path? Could you take a different route? Now, that may mean that if you're going to have to take a different path or a different route or a different strategy or tactic, it may require that you do something which most people don't want to do, which is that you maybe have to be seen starting small. One of the biggest reasons why people are not succeeding, they're not becoming winners, they're not achieving what they want, is because most people aren't prepared to be seen starting small, to be beginners. In fact, I meet a lot of people who actually they've had a really incredible relationship with their partner, but their relationship is starting to get stale. Their relationship is actually starting to go backwards because, as I said, anything which isn't growing is automatically declining. And one of the things that I have to explain to people is that if your relationship started off at 1 and now you've got to the point where it's at 10, in order to take your relationship to the next level, to the next stage, which is a 20, you have to go back to 1 again. Because 11 is 1 at the beginning. Do you understand what I mean by that? So if your relationship is at 1 when you first start off and you get it to 10, in order for you to reach 20, your relationship has to go back to 11 and work its way all through the different stages, 11, 12, 13, 14. You see, most people don't want to go back to stages 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I was speaking to my granddad and I said to my granddad, Granddad, you were married before to Granny and you guys got divorced after like 10 years and you've been married for the second time and you and my other grandmother have been married for like 40 years now. Let me ask you, what's the secret? Why? And you guys seem happier and more loving. Like, I remember Granddad when he was younger and they were in love. But now they're even older and they've been together even longer and they're more loving and they're more passionate. And we went on this family holiday to Wales and they were dancing together. It was remarkable. So I said, Granddad, what's your secret? My granddad said to me that, Cassim, as your relationship develops over the years, one of the things that will happen is that the relationship will change, right? And you have to learn in your relationship again. So he said, when we had your father, so my dad, when they had my dad, so before they had my dad, they were dating and they were spending a lot of time together and everything revolved around each other. But then when they had my dad, they then had to change stuff because they had 3 children and they, sometimes on the weekends, one of them was at football, another one was at swimming, another one was at gymnastics, and actually their relationship had to adapt and change. Then he said, when all the children left, our relationship changed again because me and your grandmother had to learn to be with each other again. We had spent literally decades with not being together. On the weekends, we were always around children. So we had to actually learn, oh, right, okay, I've got to ask my wife how she is. I've got to ask her what she wants to do. Because before, we asked the children and our entire lives revolved around what the children needed, where the children needed to go, homework, classes. They said that we actually had to find hobbies because before we had things to talk about and we had something in common, which were the children, which is what allowed us to be able to connect and communicate. And after the children left, we found that we didn't have any hobbies. We didn't really have a life outside of the children. So we both had to go and learn how to pursue different hobbies and learn how to come back and together and share and communicate what we've been through. And we had to learn to flirt again and be with each other alone without children. And he said that a lot of relationships don't survive and go to the next level because people just don't change and adapt as the relationship adapts and changes. My question to you is, are you adapting and changing? Are you refining your philosophies, your belief systems, your habits? In fact, one of the things that I wrote down here is that many of us pray for change, but our character, our skill set, our habits, our attitudes, and our lifestyle cannot sustain or maintain the abundance. Many of you guys, you want your relationship to go from a 10 to a 20. But the issue is, in order for it to do that, there is a certain level of commitment, a certain level of vulnerability, a certain level of sharing what your dreams, your passions, your expectations. You're going to have to actually share those with your partner. In order for your relationship to go from a 10 to a 20, you're actually going to have to show up. You're actually going to have to literally do what you said to your missus. If you want your relationship to go from you being together to you actually thinking about saying to your missus to marry you, this means when you get married, there is no, this is mine and that's yours. No, it's both of yours. And you may be the kind of person who will it is mine. It's my car. It's not her car. But when you're married, there is no such thing as his and hers. They are both yours in the eyes of the law. And so you may have to redefine your attitude. You may have to redefine your philosophy. You may have to redefine your ideologies, right? In order to actually sustain what you want. Because if you say it's mine and it's hers, when you get married, your partner is going to start thinking, what do you mean you say it's yours? It's ours. We're both in this relationship, right? You may find that your whole life has been about what you want and what you want to achieve and what you want to go. But actually, now that you are getting together, now that you're building a relationship together, it's more than just about you. You've now got to consider what your other partner wants, where their dreams are. You've got to consolidate what you want and how long it's going to take you with your partners. And so this goes through a process where there is a re-merging, a redefinition, redefining of some of the things that you know. You see, I have found that the statistics can be wrong because the statistics can only be based on where you're at right now. Let me take this a bit further. So the reason why I say that the statistics can be wrong because the statistics are only based on where you're at right now is because if we look at what you're going to do in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in your life, it is easy for us to see that the reality of it is that we can kind of predict based on your current skill set, attitudes, philosophies, patterns. We can kind of predict where you're going to be, what you're going to be thinking about over the next kind of 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But the reality of life is we can only make those decisions based on where you're at right now. And the reality of life, and this has been one of the biggest lessons that I have had to learn, is that if you are growing, if you are developing, if you are somebody who's adapting and is open to change, and in fact, one of the philosophies that I have is that if you want to live up to your potential, you want to have a mind which is open to everything and is attached to nothing, that if you have that kind of mindset and that kind of attitude, you will eventually change your goals. You will eventually adapt your philosophies and where you're going to be aiming at. Because we can only base your future based on what you know right now. And if you are constantly in this ever-evolving journey where you're refining your philosophies, where you're constantly adapting your skill set, where you're acquiring more knowledge, where you're listening, where you're becoming better at communication, your hopes are going to change. In fact, I share with people that part of the reason why the odds are not in your favor at the moment is because you're not as good as what you can be. People who tend to win tend to have most of the things in their favor. People who get their answers prayed, their prayers answered. People who end up becoming winners and champions and successes in life, if you track their life backwards and you look at the things that they had, at how they started and where they're at right now, it will be pretty evident that when they first started out, they knew this, they were good at this, but now they can do this and they are good at this and they know this. They've got better, they've improved, they've actually realized more of their capacities. And I would share with you that a lot of you guys who are listening to me, part of the reason why your prayers are not being answered is because you're so reliant and putting all the emphasis on the miracle, on God answering your prayers, on the universe working out and everything working out, that you are not improving yourself, that you are not getting better, that you are not refining more of who you are. And when I talk about this, I'm talking about improving your thinking. I'm talking about improving your strategies, right? Your strategies, your map, where you're going, the routes that you're taking. I'm talking about refining your philosophies. And the last one that I want to share with you here is really about your definitions. Because most of us are still having the definitions of specific different areas of life that we had 20 years ago. Many of us don't understand. See, many of us, when we look at our life and where we're going to go and what we're going to achieve and who we're going to become, most of us are judging what we're going to do and what we're going to become based on the definitions of ourselves that we had 20 years ago. So we say, well, Cassim, of course I can never become a leader. Of course I can never become a manager. Of course I can never start my own business. And the reason why you're saying that is because you are basing your view and your goals and your vision based on the definition of you that you had when you were in school. In school, you were bad at English. You did terribly at exams. But now, You found something that you're really good at. Now your confidence is up. Now you're better at reading. Now you're more conscious. Now you're more open. Now you have the ability to accumulate information far faster. Now you have more resources at your disposal. Now you've met people along the way that actually are in good positions where you can leverage them and build teams around you to improve on your ability to achieve your goal. Yes, you may not be a leader. If we looked at your life 10 years ago, you may have been a terrible leader. But today, you've been under the tutelage of an amazing manager and you've become better. You've improved. Literally, you have become a better human being and you've become better at leading people and forecasting, and you've become better at managing, and you've become better at really looking at the world from loads of people's perspectives. But you didn't do that 10 years ago. And I wonder, some of the things that you are hoping and praying for in your life, are you praying for them, but you have the ability to actually do whatever is necessary to actually achieve them? You already have whatever you need in order to achieve them, and yet you're relying on God, on factors that are outside of yourself, which is part of the reason why you're not getting what you want, because you're asking God to do what you can already do in your own life. Which leads me to the next point, and the last point that I want to share with you, which is that so many of us don't understand that what if the very thing that we want and are praying for is already here, but in another form? I repeat, what if the very thing that we are praying for, that we want in our lives, that we hope happens, that we've got our fingers crossed for, is the very thing that is already in our lives, but in another form? I share this with you because some of you don't recognize and don't realize that you are the answer to your problems. You have been relying on God, you've been relying on your parents, you've been relying on society, you've been relying on the national lottery to become wealthy. But actually, you could go and get educated, you could go and get a really good job, you could do investments, you could become refine and become a master in a certain craft or in a certain area. You can become knowledgeable. You can become valuable to the degree that you become wealthy enough to produce the wealth that you're looking for. You are actually the answer to your problems. And I wonder whether you've actually ever considered that. I wonder whether you've realized that actually the love that you're looking for in all of these different relationships that you keep going in is a love that's already inside of you, but you've never really tapped into it. You've never brought it out of you. You have never even stopped to look at the fact that part of the reason why you're so defensive, part of the reason why you keep protecting your heart is because there is so much love inside of you that you don't want people to violate it, right? And to bring toxicity into that pure place of who you are, which means actually you're a great person, that you have love within yourself. But the issue is you don't even love yourself. You've never looked at yourself to get to the point where you love yourself to the degree where if somebody comes into your life, they're a plus. The way that you're living your life at the moment is that when this person comes into your life, then you'll be enough. When this perfect person arrives and they ask you for marriage, or you ask them for marriage and you have children and you start a family, then you will be complete. But actually, you have all the love that you're ever going to need in order to fill the void that you're feeling within, that you're missing within yourself. The issue is that there is a mismatch between the expectation of the love that you believe that you're supposed to have and the one that you do have. In other words, let me put this metaphorically. It's like you're full inside, but you don't believe that you're full because your version of what you think is full is distracting you from realizing all of the fullness that is inside of you. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Those are some of the notes that I've made on this subject. And I don't know whether they've added some value into your life. I don't know whether they've been useful for you or not. But I just wanted to just get you to think about that. Get you to think about the fact that actually, many times, many of us are praying for a savior. Many of us are praying for a miracle. Many of us want God to answer our prayers. But actually, we are the answer to our prayers. If we can refine our philosophy, we can change our strategies, we can change our ideologies, we can refine aspects of who we are, we can upgrade our skills, we can acquire more knowledge, we then put ourselves in a position where actually we live up to a statement that I love what that Oprah said, which is luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Meaning that we are so ready, we love ourselves so much that when somebody comes along, they're a plus to us. We've been doing so much work on improving our philosophy, on improving our thinking, on reading, on taking courses, that when that leadership position eventually comes up, we're ready to embrace it. And it may not even come in the way that we think it's going to come. Because, as I said earlier on, I think it's really important that as we grow, as we develop, we begin to redefine some of our definitions of stuff, right? You may think about love and your relationship and your perfect family coming in one form, but actually it may already be in your life, but in a different form. And my question to you is, have you expanded all of the different definitions of what life and how life can present itself to you? That's it. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope that I've added some value into your life. If you found this useful and you want to join our community, guys, you know what to do. Jump on our YouTube channel, Cassimotive. Subscribe. Press the notification button is what I've been told to tell you. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I shall speak to you very soon. Bye for now.